Greetings, everyone. This is Live Life Well TV host Robert Landau, and this is another episode of a weekly program here on Live Life Well TV that we call America's Greatest Personalities. And this episode, we have a great one, a wonderful, wonderful guy that I think the personal life of which a lot of people don't know about. So join me as we take a look at a little of the life, journey, and humor of the great Rodney Dangerfield. Stay tuned. I don't know about you, but to me, Rodney Dangerfield was a consummate comedian. To this very day, I still go onto YouTube and look at all the wonderful clips of the appearances Mr. Dangerfield made with the great Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show. And if you haven't seen those clips, please do yourself a favor, particularly if you need a laugh or two or three, go onto YouTube and do a search for Rodney Dangerfield, The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and prepare to be royally entertained. They are so much fun and give me a lift whenever I need them. Rodney Dangerfield was a lovely, lovely guy, totally professional, and he totally knew his audience and what would make us laugh. It was a special brand of humor that only he was adept at sharing with us. He knew our trigger points, and suffice it to say, he totally pressed them. Rodney's jokes were all true to his core, and actually they were based on his perception of himself. So what that means is just about every joke he told, if it had to do with him, really was an autobiographical slice of his life, possibly what he was going through at the time, and certainly what he had experienced in his past. His rapid-fire comic delivery style was totally unique, and that's one of the many things I loved about him. The only other great American comedian who came close to that sort of rapid-fire comic timing was the great Phyllis Diller. And we have America's Greatest Personalities presentation on Phyllis Diller on the channel if you want to go back and look for it. And just like Phyllis Diller, there was nobody else like Rodney Dangerfield. So this is what his style was. He would do a setup with a joke, right? Then there would be a punchline, then there would be another setup, then there would be a punchline, setup, punchline, and really, just like Phyllis Diller, it was rapid fire. He almost didn't have a chance to breathe in between jokes, but it started here, and then it would build and build and build until you just couldn't stop laughing and watch Johnny Carson break out into spontaneous fits of laughter because he too really appreciated and understood the humor of the great Rodney Dangerfield. So here are some of the things Mr. Dangerfield was famous for saying. He once said, "With my wife, I don't get no respect. I made a toast on her birthday to the best woman a man ever had. The waiter joined me." He also said, "I drink too much. The last time I gave a urine sample, it had an olive in it." Rodney also said, "It's tough to stay married. My wife kisses the dog on the lips, yet she won't drink from my glass." He also said, "If it wasn't for pickpockets, I'd have no sex life at all." So let's talk a bit about his life story. And because, believe it or not, it took Rodney 30 years to become an overnight success, yes, 30 years to become an overnight success. Think about that for a minute. I think you'll find his life story more than valid and quite interesting indeed. So, why didn't he perform between the ages of 28 and 41? Let's find out the answer to that and so many other things as well. Let's start off with a question. Do you think Rodney Dangerfield was Rodney Dangerfield's given name? And you probably guessed the answer to that as being no. I don't feel it was his given name. His given name was Jacob Cohen. Jacob Cohen. And he was born on November 22nd, 1921, in a place called Babylon, which happens to be in Long Island, New York. He had an older sister. Rodney's mom was born in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. His father, Philip Cohen, from New York, was always on the road as a comedy vaudeville performer. Suffice it to say that Rodney's dad was never there for his two kids, something that pained Rodney to his core, as you can well imagine, as Rodney grew up. Get this, Rodney's dad saw Rodney twice a year for 30-minute visits. I'm going to say that again because that is unbelievable to even think about. Rodney's dad saw Rodney twice a year for 30-minute visits. Wow. And it wasn't only his father, actually. It is said that Rodney's mother didn't want anything to do with him or his sister either. Nevertheless, he was a totally devoted son, despite the fact that his parents constantly, emotionally, and psychologically abused him. Rodney once said that if nothing goes right during your childhood, you carry that hurt for the rest of your life. And I believe that too. But a wonderful way to begin to heal that hurt is to heal it with comedy. Think about that. If you can laugh about pain, be it emotional, psychological, or even physical, you're going to begin to feel so much better. And you will continue to feel so much better every time you choose to do something healing like that. Don't ever underestimate the immense healing power of humor. Abandonment, humiliation, lack of love, and caring were all very valid words to describe how Dangerfield grew up. So what do you do when your childhood absolutely stinks? And that's not an underestimate. In Rodney's case, it would be immersing himself, as I said, in the world of comedy. Why? Because it was a very effective way for him to deal with the emotional pain and hurt in his life. When did Rodney know that comedy was his calling? You won't believe it, but he got his first hint at the wonderful world of comedy and how he could become a part of it at only 5 years of age. It was dinner time, and he felt he wasn't served enough food. Rodney then went up to his mother and asked for more, and she told him that what she gave him was sufficient. Sufficient. He responded by saying, "You didn't serve fish," at 5 years old. That's pretty funny if you think about it. And to that end, Rodney got a huge laugh and thought, wow, okay, this might be something I want to keep as part of my breath, as something that I may want to build upon as the years go on. So at the age of 15, he started writing jokes that had everything to do with his unhappy and very painful childhood. Just a few years later, Rodney would start playing some local comedy clubs under the name Jack Roy. Did he do well? No. Why? Because he was angry and hurt And I think at that point in his fledgling career, his audiences could feel more anger and hurt than something to actually laugh about. He also, at that time, didn't have a brand and he didn't have an identity. Dangerfield was also earning $5 to $10 a night. So I don't think that that was something that he was very happy about either. And maybe his audiences during those days felt his pain, felt his frustration. After 10 years of doing this, night after night after night, Rodney had absolutely nothing to show for his efforts. On the personal side of things, he had something to show for his efforts. A wonderful lady by the name of Joyce Sindig, S-I-N-D-I-G. She was a jazz singer in the clubs, and that's, of course, where they met. It was a great relationship. She was great for him and very much in love with him, something that he had actually, as you can probably figure out, searching for all his life. And he finally found it in Joyce. The two decided to quit show business and get married. Rodney at this time was 28 years of age. Now, it was the 1950s, and Rodney decided to become an aluminum siding salesman. Yeah, an aluminum siding salesman. And you know what? He was absolutely great at it. He knew how to make his customers like him, and that actually was the thing, the method, the technique that made sale after sale after sale for him. Was he totally happy doing this? No. No, it was way too monotonous. So he continued to write jokes, channeling all of that frustration concerning aluminum siding sales into the jokes that he wrote. He would write hundreds and hundreds of jokes over the next couple of years, hoping to use them as a comedian once again, sometime in the near future. Even though Rodney and Joyce would welcome a son into their marriage unfortunately started to suffer. His marriage would soon end in divorce, to which Rodney would say the following words: "If I can't find perfection in my personal relationships, I can once again try to find it on the stage in the form of comedy." And now, like I said before, he had thousands of jokes that he had created to help him get back on the comedy stage. Jokes such as, "With my wife, I don't get no respect. I made a toast on her birthday to the best woman a man ever had." Oh, and that was the joke I shared with you before. "And the waiter joined me." So yes, these were the jokes at this point that he came up with. So in 1962, at the age of 40, Rodney tried his luck once again as a stand-up comedian. Do you think it might have worked this time? Well, not at first, but of course, ultimately, yes. And thank God for that. And his marriage would work once again, too, as he and Joyce would remarry and give it a go a second time. Now, a daughter was born, and soon the marriage, unfortunately, started not to work. The only thing that would work for Rodney at this point was his act. And you know what really did it for him? His new name. He went from Jack Roy to Rodney Dangerfield. But how did this happen? Rodney asked the owner of a comedy club to make up a name for him, and that's how the name Rodney Dangerfield came to be. The new name worked, but you know what totally worked for him? The character that Rodney created around the name Rodney Dangerfield. And I said character that he created around his new name. At first, the idea, the theme was, "With me, nothing works right." That kind of was his statement. That was his byline, so to speak. And that was okay, but when he changed his tagline to, what do you think? I don't get no respect, bookings started to soar for Rodney. That key phrase, I don't get no respect, struck a chord deep within most audiences who were hearing him, because most of us at one time or other don't feel that we get any respect. So now he was giving love to his audiences instead of anger, frustration, and disappointment, and getting love in return from his audience as well. And really, that's all he ever wanted. So now the healing could really begin. At the age of 44, Rodney got his best gig ever in those days. It was an appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show in March of 1967. He appeared with what would eventually become his signature look. Think about it, whenever you see him or saw him, he would most likely be dressed in a black suit, red tie, and white shirt. Nervous tics as part of his delivery and movements, his telltale bulging eyes, all worked so very well for him and helped him establish his kind of professional character. And he never would take any of all of that out of his act. And you know what's really equally as cool? Rodney would reconcile, get this, with his father, realizing that it was his mother that his father was trying to get away from, and not Rodney. What a huge, important psychological, emotional realization for Rodney. You want to talk about healing the past? Wow, that realization, that awareness did it in a major way. Rodney's dad even came to a show and praised Rodney for the incredible job Rodney did on stage. This happened shortly before his father's passing. Next up, a major appearance on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and as you can probably see on YouTube, it was an amazing success. As you well know, when you would get Johnny's approval, if you were a comedian, boy, you could pretty much call your career a very, very prosperous and successful one. 25 million viewers saw Rodney on his first appearance with Johnny Carson, all with his own personally crafted autobiographical jokes, of course. Because of The Tonight Show, Las Vegas came calling next and would offer Rodney tens of thousands of dollars to appear there, and of course, appear there he did. Rodney and Las Vegas were a perfect marriage. But what if I told you that things were not going well at home for Mr. Dangerfield at this period of time? His wife would now have to deal with an extremely debilitating case of arthritis, which also caused her to allegedly turn to the bottle. So, regretfully, Dangerfield decided to focus on his domestic situation once again, but this time zeroing in on his children, giving them the childhood that he never had. So while all of this was going on, he had a brilliant idea. If I can't be on the stage every night, he probably said to himself, and travel all over the country doing so, I will open my own comedy club close to home in New York City. And so Dangerfield's opened and was a major success. In fact, you would often hear him kind of advertise about his comedy club when he was with Johnny Carson, and other appearances on TV as well. Not only for Rodney would this be good, but it helped launch the careers of Jerry Seinfeld, who would appear at Dangerfield's. Also, Jim Carrey, Tim Allen, Jeff Foxworthy, Sam Kinison, Andrew Dice Clay, Louis Anderson, and Bob Saget, all up-and-coming comedians who appeared on the Dangerfield's comedy stage. Movies were next, and Rodney made some very popular ones that you might have seen. How about Caddyshack, Easy Money, Back to School, Ladybugs, and so many more. And he was brilliant in all of those. I don't think Rodney Dangerfield ever gave a bad performance, whether it was on screen or on the television screen or on the comedy nightclub stage. Rodney also recorded no less than 8 award-winning comedy albums. We would lose this truly great guy and hilariously funny comedian on October 5th, 2004 at the UCLA Medical Center, a month and a half shy of his 83rd birthday. He would pass from complications due to heart surgery that he had undergone that August. His body rests in his beloved Kew Gardens, Long Island, New York. What an incredible guy. Here's why, at least one of the reasons why I think so much of Rodney Dangerfield. When you have a tough childhood, when you experience your heart being torn out of your body, and it has nothing to do with you, there is a lack of love from your parents. There's a lack of support from your parents. There's nobody who believes in you as you continue to grow. You have a choice when you are born into circumstances like that. You either rise above it or you go down with it. Rodney rose above it, and he found something within himself, an untapped energy, an untapped flow, an untapped talent, and an untapped healer. All of that had to do with the word comedy. And he was able to rise above these very trying situations in his life and make light of them. What a huge lesson, an example and mentor of life has Rodney Dangerfield been to people like me and maybe to people like you. If you can turn horrible negatives into, let's just say, humorous positives, wow, great healing can begin. And that, to me, is what life is all about. This has been Robert Landau, Live Life Well TV host, thanking you for joining me for another episode of America's Greatest Personality.